You know how we think about like the environmental impact of, all things creative,
Right.
like writing, making art. We're talking like a real carbon showdown.
Oh, wow.
AI versus humans.
That's a fascinating topic for sure.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
And we're looking at this peer-reviewed scientific article.
Cool.
And it asks like this pretty mind-blowing question.
Okay.
What if like using AI to write and illustrate stuff was actually better for the environment
Interesting.
than like us humans doing it? Like, could your next, big novel be carbon neutral if you let a robot write the whole thing?
Wow.
But then at what cost, right?
Right.
So today we're going to unpack like all the findings of this research.
Okay.
We're going to break down how they got to their conclusions.
Cool.
And then kind of explore like what it all means.
I think the results are really thought-provoking.
Yeah, so let's just jump right into it.
Okay.
So this study, it focuses on AI systems that I'm sure a lot of people listening have heard of, like ChatGPT for writing,
Yeah.
Daily 2, Midjourney for illustration.
Right.
So like, what's the big takeaway here?
Well, they found that these AI systems produce way less CO2e.
C2E.
Yeah, carbon dioxide equivalent. It's like a way to measure all the greenhouse gases.
Gotcha.
And that's for each, page of text or image they create.
Okay, so less CO2e, but how much less are we talking here?
Yeah.
Like, give us the numbers.
So the difference is actually pretty big.
Okay.
For writing, AI emissions are 130 to 1,500 times lower
Wow.
than for human writers.
Oh, wow.
And for illustration,
Yeah.
it's even bigger, 310 to 2,900 times lower.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Not even in the same, ballpark.
Right.
So how did they even, calculate those numbers?
So they used what's called a life cycle assessment, which considers emissions, across the whole lifespan of both the AI and the humans that are doing that same task.
Okay, so let's dig into that life cycle assessment a bit more.
Sure.
What factors are they looking at on the AI side?
So with AI, there's kind of two main sources of emissions.
Okay.
First, there's the energy that it takes to train the model,
Right.
which happens just once, but it can be a pretty big chunk.
Right.
It's like sending your AI to boot camp
Okay.
to learn everything it needs to know.
Gotcha. And so that's one big energy gulp, and then what happens?
Yeah. And then the second source is the energy it uses for each query or task.
Okay.
Like writing a paragraph or creating an image.
Right.
So think of it like the AI's daily commute to work.
Gotcha.
It's using a little bit of energy each time.
Okay.
But for writing specifically,
Yeah.
at that initial cost, that big training cost, it gets spread out over a huge number of queries.
Right, because these models are used all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So the impact per use becomes pretty tiny.
Interesting.
And here's another thing.
What's that?
Even the energy it takes to make and eventually recycle the hardware the AI runs on, that's super small compared to the energy used in training and queries.
So even with all that stuff combined, the training, the queries, the hardware, AI still comes out way ahead.
Yeah, it seems like it.
On carbon emissions.
Yeah, based on this research.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about the human side of all this. How do they even measure the carbon footprint of a human writer or illustrator?
So for that, they looked at things like average writing speed, the per capita emissions of different countries. They used the U.S. and India as examples.
Okay.
And then the energy consumption of the computers that people use for creative work.
So they're factoring in the energy a person uses just living, plus what they use while they're working.
Exactly.
And then the computer's energy on top of that. Did they find anything surprising there?
Yeah, one kind of surprising thing was the computer usage for a human making content turned out to be a bigger contributor to their carbon footprint.
Huh. I wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It kind of shows how much energy our devices use.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes you think twice about leaving your computer on all the time.
Definitely.
I mean, they're not using it.
So, okay.
Yeah.
We've seen that when it comes to these CO2 emissions.
Right.
AI seems to be winning this carbon showdown.
It seems that way. Yeah.
But what about the bigger picture?
Right.
Are there downsides to handing over all our creative work?
Yeah. That's where things get a little more complicated.
Okay.
We have to think about the social and economic impacts too. Yeah. One big concern is job displacement.
Yeah.
If AI is doing all the writing and illustrating, what happens to all the people who do those jobs now?
Right.
The writers, the journalists, the artists, the illustrators.
Yeah, it's a valid concern.
Definitely.
The environmental impact is super important, but we can't just ignore the people whose livelihoods are affected.
Yeah, and then there's the legal stuff.
Oh, right.
About using copyrighted material in AI training data sets.
Oh, interesting.
So remember, AI learns by being fed tons of data.
Right.
Including text and images.
Yeah.
But what if that data includes stuff that's copyrighted?
Oh, so the AI might be learning from existing art and writing without even knowing. And that could be a legal mess.
Yeah, a legal minefield for the companies that are developing these systems.
Well,
and there are already lawsuits happening around this. There's a class action lawsuit against the company Midjourney.
Because they're accused of using copyrighted images to train their AI.
I mean, the outcome of cases like that could have a huge impact on how AI develops in the future.
Yeah, no doubt.
And then beyond that, there's also that whole question of rebound effects.
Right.
What if, as AI gets more efficient and cheaper to use, it actually leads to more demand for content? Instead of us producing less, we end up making and using even more just because it's so easy and cheap to do it with AI.
It's like if you build a more fuel-efficient car, but then you just drive it twice as much because you think you're saving gas.
Totally.
It's like that.
Yeah. So it's not a simple good or bad kind of thing.
Yeah, it's complicated.
There's all these different consequences to think about.
Exactly.
But I don't want to be all doom and gloom here.
Right.
The study did talk about some, good things about AI, right?
Yeah. There are definitely some potential benefits. Okay, what are those?
I mean, AI can help us solve some of our biggest sustainability challenges.
Okay.
It can help us use energy better.
Okay.
Develop new materials. And even fight climate change.
Right.
Through things like carbon capture technology.
So it's kind of ironic.
Yeah.
AI could actually be part of the solution.
It is kind of ironic.
To this whole carbon problem we're talking about.
Yeah, but it shows that it's not the technology itself.
Right.
It's good or bad. It's really how we decide to use it.
It's like anything.
Yeah.
It's all about using it responsibly.
Exactly.
So what about other areas?
Yeah.
Like medicine and education?
Yeah.
Could AI be useful there too?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
In medicine, it's already being used to diagnose diseases earlier.
Oh, wow.
Personalize treatments and even find new drugs.
Okay.
And in education, it can help personalize learning.
Right.
Adapt to how different students learn.
Okay.
And give them feedback in real time.
That's amazing.
It's a powerful tool that could really change a lot of things.
So it seems like AI is kind of this double-edged sword.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
It's got this potential for huge benefits, but also some serious risks.
Right.
So it's not about whether AI is good or bad.
Yeah.
It's about how we use it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We got to figure out how to use its power for good.
Right.
While also being aware of the risks and making sure things are fair for everyone.
Right.
It's tricky.
It's a tough.
But it's something we got to figure out.
I love that idea of collaboration. It's not about AI replacing humans.
Yeah.
It's about them working together to achieve something better than either one could do alone.
That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah, that partnership idea, it really is encouraging,
Yeah, it's not about.
It's not us versus them.
Right, it's more about how we can work together.
We're on the same team.
Yeah, and combine our strengths.
Okay, so as we're kind of wrapping up this whole deep dive.
Okay.
What's the main takeaway for our listeners? What have we learned about AI versus humans?
Well, the study shows that AI can be a lot better for the environment when it comes to writing and illustration.
Yeah.
But it's not that simple.
Right.
There's more to it than that.
Right. We can't just ignore all those other things we talked about.
Yeah, exactly.
What about the jobs and all the legal stuff with copyright?
Right. All that's super important.
And then there's that thing where AI gets more efficient.
Right.
But then we might actually end up using more.
Exactly.
And then there's the ethics of it all.
Yeah, we can't forget about that.
It's complicated.
It's definitely complicated.
So how do we find that balance?
Right.
How do we use AI for good?
Yeah.
But also minimize all the risks.
Yeah.
And make sure it's fair for everyone.
Yeah. It's a challenge.
It's a tough one.
But it's a challenge worth tackling.
This whole conversation has got me thinking.
Yeah.
What happens to human creativity?
Right.
If AI is doing all the everyday writing and drawing.
It's a good question.
what do we do with all that, like, creative energy?
Maybe it'll free us up to explore new things, to be even more creative.
Push the boundaries.
Exactly.
And, like, what about the things that make us human? Like how we connect with each other through art, our emotions, telling stories.
Right.
AI can't really do that, can it?
Not yet, anyway.
That's pretty exciting to think about.
Yeah.
Like, imagine a world where our creativity isn't limited by time or resources or anything.
Yeah, it'd be amazing.
That's a future I want to see.
Me too, definitely.